The bunker's last breath, Hitler, the Holocaust, and the final hours. Why was this man, Adolf Hitler, consumed by a hatred so vast it led to the systematic murder of 6 million people? And what truly happened in the frantic, paranoid, and suffocating final moments of his life, deep beneath the ruins of a conquered Berlin? This is the story of the monstrous culmination of a lifelong, crippling obsession and the pathetic, ignominious end of one of history's most terrifying figures. It's a narrative less about a glorious tyrant and more about a failing artist consumed by radical ideology, dragging a continent into the abyss, and finally facing his own ruin. The Seed of Hatred: How a Failed Artist Found a Scapegoat. To understand the Holocaust is to understand the core of Hitler's ideology, a toxic brew of radical German nationalism, racial pseudoscience, and a crippling personal sense of failure. The roots of his virulent anti-Semitism were not born in the high halls of power, but in the crowded, poor-quality men's shelters of pre-World War I Vienna. A young Hitler, having failed twice to gain entry to the Academy of Fine Arts, drifted through the city, earning a meager living selling postcards of his sketches. The disappointment of his artistic career was immense. This personal failure, the sense that he was not to blame for his mediocrity, needed an external explanation. Vienna at the turn of the century was a hotbed of nationalist and anti-Semitic literature, particularly the concept of the stab in the back, Dolchstoßlegende, theory which was popularized after Germany's defeat in World War I. This conspiracy claimed that the German army was not defeated on the battlefield, but betrayed by internal enemies, communists, liberals, and critically, Jews. For Hitler, this hateful narrative provided a convenient, all-encompassing answer. The Jew became the eternal enemy, the root cause of every societal ill, the failure of the German economy, the rise of communism, which he saw as a Jewish plot, the perceived moral decay of the Weimar Republic, and even his own lack of success. In his mind, the Jews were not merely a religious or ethnic group, they were a racial virus, a parasitic force undermining the Aryan race, which he viewed as the pinnacle of human evolution. The goal was not merely discrimination or expulsion, it was purification. This psychotic worldview, laid out in Mein Kampf, became the core doctrine of the Nazi Party. When Hitler finally achieved power in 1933, his initial actions were those of political consolidation and persecution, stripping Jews of their citizenship with the Nuremberg Laws, 1935, isolating them and encouraging their emigration. But as World War II dragged on and the dream of a quick German victory dissolved, the pace and scope of the anti-Jewish policy escalated into a macabre industrial reality. The invasion of the Soviet Union in 1941 was the critical turning point. Hitler believed he was fighting a war against Jewish Bolshevism. Behind the front lines, the Einsatzgruppen, mobile killing squads, began mass shootings. Finally, in January 1942, at the Wannsee Conference, high-ranking Nazi officials coordinated the final phase of the plan, the final solution to the Jewish question, die Endlösung der Judenfrage. This was the systematic, bureaucratic blueprint for genocide, leveraging new killing centers like Auschwitz and Treblinka, designed to streamline murder on an unprecedented industrial scale. The entire German state apparatus, railways, chemical companies, and construction firms, was repurposed to commit the unthinkable. Hitler did not have to sign a single definitive order for the Holocaust. His vision of racial purification had so permeated the system that his subordinates acted on his stated will with zealous efficiency. The systematic gassing, burning, and brutal starvation of 6 million human beings was to Hitler the ultimate fulfillment of his life's purpose, the cleansing of the Reich. The fateful last 10 days, April 1945. By April 1945, the 1,000-year Reich was collapsing. The Soviets had encircled Berlin, their artillery shells booming rhythmically over the capital. Hitler, now a physical wreck, shuffling, trembling from what was likely Parkinson's disease, his face pale and blotchy, had retreated to his subterranean headquarters, the Führerbunker, 55 feet beneath the bombed-out Reich Chancellery Garden. The bunker was a concrete tomb, Small, hot, poorly ventilated, and lit by buzzing electric bulbs, where a corps of loyalists, secretaries, and military personnel carried on a grotesque parody of governing a non-existent empire. April 20th, 1945, Hitler's 56th birthday. It was the last time he would see the light of day. A small reception was held, a pathetic gathering that included propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels and SS chief Heinrich Himmler. It was immediately clear to everyone that retreat was impossible. Goebbels, the consummate fanatic, informed the Führer that he would remain and die by his side.
April 22nd, Hitler suffered a complete nervous collapse. During a situation conference, he was informed that a crucial counterattack, led by General Steiner, a phantom force that existed only on paper, was impossible. He erupted in a terrifying, frothing rage, screaming that he had been betrayed by the Wehrmacht and the SS. He concluded by declaring that the war was lost, he would not leave Berlin, and he would die in the city. In a symbolic act of finality, he ordered the destruction of Germany's remaining infrastructure, the Nero Decree, so that the Allies would inherit nothing but a wasteland. His armaments minister, Albert Speer, defied this mad order, knowing it would doom the German people. April 28th. The news reached the bunker that SS commander Heinrich Himmler, Hitler's most loyal executor of the Holocaust, had been negotiating a separate peace with the Western Allies through the Swedish Count Folke Bernadotte. This was the ultimate betrayal, a knife in the back. Hitler, fueled by a paranoid fury, immediately condemned Himmler as a traitor. He ordered Himmler's liaison in the bunker, Hermann Fegelein, who also happened to be Eva Braun's brother-in-law, to be arrested and executed. Fegelein, found trying to flee in civilian clothes, was summarily shot. That same evening, Hitler made a final bizarre move. For years, Eva Braun had been his mistress, kept largely in the shadows. Now, with death imminent, he decided to legitimize their relationship. The last wedding and the will. April 29th, shortly after midnight. In a small, cramped map room of the bunker, Hitler and Eva Braun were married in a brief civil ceremony performed by a minor municipal official pulled from the fighting outside. Both declared their pure Aryan descent, a final dark joke, and signed their marriage papers. Eva Braun, now Eva Hitler, had achieved her life's ambition just hours before her death. Following the ceremony, Hitler dictated his final political testament to his secretary, Traudl Jung. The document was a rambling, self-aggrandizing justification for his actions and a final fanatical expression of his anti-Semitic hatred. It is untrue that I or anyone else in Germany wanted the war in 1939. It was wanted and provoked exclusively by those international statesmen who were either of Jewish descent or worked for Jewish interests. I want to bequest to the German people a legacy of struggle against international Jewry so that it may be a century-long heroic conflict. In his will, he expelled Himmler and Hermann Göring, who had asked for permission to take command of the Reich, from the party, and named a new, final, completely ineffective government, with Admiral Karl Donitz as the new president and Joseph Goebbels as chancellor. Death in the concrete coffin. April 30th, 1945. The morning was tense. The Soviet line was now mere blocks away. The relentless shelling had cut the bunker's power for a time, leaving them in darkness. He ate a simple, final lunch of vegetable soup with his two remaining secretaries and his cook. Afterward, he summoned the remaining staff and military commanders, shaking hands with each one, a silent, final farewell. He then retreated to his private study with his wife, Eva. The air in the bunker was heavy with anticipation. Everyone waited. Around 3:30 p.m., a single shot echoed through the concrete corridors. Hitler and Eva had executed their suicide pact. The plan was meticulous, based on his immense paranoia of falling into Soviet hands and being publicly humiliated. Eva took a capsule of cyanide, reportedly slumping over almost instantly. Hitler, likely fearing the cyanide wouldn't work or wishing for a quicker end, bit down on a cyanide capsule and simultaneously shot himself in the right temple with a Walther PPK pistol. Within minutes, Hitler's valet, Heinz Linge, and his adjutant, Otto Gunsche, entered the study. The scene was grim. The metallic smell of blood and burnt gunpowder filled the small room. The Führer was slumped over the sofa, blood dripping onto the carpet. Eva was lifeless beside him. Following his express orders, the two bodies were wrapped in gray blankets, carried up the emergency stairwell and out into the shattered, shell-pocked garden of the Chancellery, close to the entrance of the bunker. Petrol was poured over the bodies, and the small group of loyalists, including Goebbels, stood at attention, giving a final Nazi salute as the flames consumed the corpses.
The cremation was incomplete due to the constant Soviet shelling, but the bodies were burned beyond recognizable features. The aftermath. The story of the man who sought to annihilate a people ended with him annihilating himself, his body reduced to a charred, incomplete pile of ashes and bone fragments in a shallow bomb crater. The Soviets, advancing into the garden 2 days later, found the remains. Dental records, unique bridgework, later confirmed their identity. The dictator who had preached the supremacy of the Aryan race and the conquest of a continent became nothing more than a few scattered, unidentifiable parts of a corpse, hastily buried, then exhumed, then finally, according to Soviet accounts, completely pulverized and scattered to prevent his grave from becoming a neo-Nazi shrine. On May 7, 1945, the final unconditional surrender of Germany was signed. The war in Europe was over. The final morbid image is not of a conquering hero, but of a paranoid, failed individual consumed by hate who died hiding in a bunker, leaving behind a continent in ruins and the incomprehensible legacy of the Holocaust. The bunker was his final, fittingly desolate monument.